Rome did not fall in a single night. It was not felled by one battle, one emperor, or one enemy. Rome fell the way a great mountain crumbles, not from a mighty blow, but from countless tiny cracks that no one noticed until it was too late. Tonight, let me take you into the quiet, forgotten corners of the greatest empire the world has ever seen, and reveal the 5 whispers that brought Rome to its knees. Stay close, because what destroyed Rome still destroys people today. Rome began as a small village of farmers and soldiers, men who prized duty, discipline, and unity above all else. They were bound by a shared sense of purpose, a collective identity that fueled their ascent from a humble settlement to a sprawling republic. But centuries later, as Rome grew rich, powerful, and proud, something subtle began to fade. The Romans forgot why they built their empire in the first place. They forgot the values that had made them strong. The discipline that carved an empire from the wilderness was replaced by an insatiable hunger for luxury and ease. Seneca once warned, "Wealth is the test of a man's soul." For Rome, wealth did not strengthen the soul, it softened Italiano. People who once lived for the Republic began living only for themselves. The greater Rome became, the more it drifted away from the spirit that created it. A civilization collapses the same way a person does when they forget who they were. Once, Romans fought for their homeland. Their legionaries were citizens, farmers who put down their plows to pick up a sword in defense of the state. Later, they only watched others fight. People who had built an empire with their own hands now sat in giant arenas, waiting to be entertained. The emperors saw this. They learned a dangerous lesson. If you give the people bread and games, they will forget their problems. Soon, the Colosseum became louder than the Senate. The cravings of the crowd for spectacle and sport became more important than the wisdom of leaders. Rome slowly turned from a nation of participants into a nation of spectators. Citizens who once debated in the forum now only cheered in the amphitheater. They traded their civic responsibility for cheap grain and bloody entertainment. And when people stop participating in their own society, the empire that holds them together begins to rot from the inside. Every empire has enemies, but Rome's greatest enemy was one it created itself. Corruption. As the empire expanded, so did greed. So did ambition. So did the insatiable hunger for power. The virtues that once defined a Roman leader honored integrity. Service gradually eroded. People once chosen for their character were now chosen for their connections. Generals bought the loyalty of their legions with promises of plunder instead of earning it through shared sacrifice. Senators sold their influence like merchants selling grain in the market, turning public office into a private enterprise. Little by little, trust faded. The foundation of the Republic, built on mutual respect and the rule of law, began to crack. Integrity weakened. Corruption became normal, then expected, and eventually even respected as a sign of cunning and power. And just like dust in a house, when corruption goes unnoticed for too long, it becomes thicker and thicker until it suffocates the whole room. No empire falls united. Rome was no exception. As it expanded, the empire became too large, too complex, and too different to be governed as a single entity. The bonds that once held it together began to fray. In the West, the Romans chased comfort, luxury, and a life less anchored in the old disciplines. They looked back to the traditions of the Latin heartland, even as they abandoned them. In the East, they pursued wealth, art, knowledge, and intricate strategy, embracing a culture that was more Greek and Oriental than Roman. Both halves of the empire grew apart in silence. They began speaking different languages, adopting different cultures, and pursuing different priorities. A single empire slowly became two worlds, sharing the same name but no longer the same heart. And when a nation forgets its common identity, when its people no longer see themselves in one another, it no longer stands as one. History remembers the Germanic tribes, the Goths, the Vandals, and the Huns. It remembers the great invasions and the sacking of the city. But here is the truth few people understand. Rome did not fall because its enemies were strong. Rome fell because Rome itself became weak. The walls of its cities remained tall. The legions still marched under the eagle's standard. But the spirit inside them, the discipline, the unity, the purpose was fading away. The soldiers fighting on the frontiers were no longer Roman citizens defending their homes, but mercenaries fighting for gold. An empire collapses long before its enemies arrive at the gates. Its foundations cracked from within, hollowed out by apathy, division, and decay. By the time the barbarians reached the heart of the empire, Rome had already fallen in its heart. They were not conquering a mighty power. They were simply pushing over a hollow shell. Every leaf falls, every star burns out, every empire fades. Rome believed it was eternal, invincible, a city chosen by the gods to rule the world forever. But time humbles all things, every kingdom, every dynasty, and every human being. The fall of Rome is not just a story from history. It is a reminder written in stone for all of humanity. Nothing is permanent except the lessons we learn. Rome fell not because of one single disaster, but because its people stopped guarding the values that made them strong. They took their strength for granted, and in doing so, they lost it. A person is no different. If you abandon discipline, comfort will conquer you. If you trade purpose for pleasure, you will become a spectator in your own life. If you stop growing, decay will find you. If you forget who you are and what you stand for, the world will decide for you. Rome whispers one final truth across the centuries. Build yourself as if you were a nation. Protect your character like it is your most vital border. Strengthen your mind as you would your walls, or you will fall long before the world ever notices. History never shouts. It whispers, and today, it whispered through Rome. If you want more ancient wisdom, come back tomorrow. The past still has many stories to tell.